Hey there, Mr. Terry, high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher X video. All right, we're back with another Legal Eagle video, and I've pulled up their channel from time to time to get legal context for things that are either historical or are going to be historical. But of course, one of the things you hear about is a bias or a consistent either slant or conclusion or interpretation that you find consistent with their videos, which can also be known as bias. Now, this video just came out a few days ago, and it's called "This Channel is Biased." So I'm interested to see what they are going to say about this. A running theme the last about year or so has definitely been about President Trump. And of course, they've consistently been very negative about it. But we'll see what they say about their bias in this video. And I hope to share some thoughts along the way as well. Original video is going to be linked down below. All right, here we go. All right, bias is natural. It is something that is unavoidable for the fact that when we talk about something or we form opinions, we are limited to our own experiences and what we have learned. Because you can't know something you don't know, and you can't experience something that you've not experienced. Now, one of the hardest things, though, is being able to understand what your biases are. And I certainly have them. So do you. And it is indeed important for us as learners and as educators, or really everybody, to try to identify biases, both your own and, with us in the YouTube sphere, the biases of channels. Now, if you're one that is saying, oh, well, I know about these unbiased channels or unbiased people, whether it's historian or political commentators, and if you say, well, this one seemed unbiased, it's usually the case that you might say that because people will usually think bias means something I don't believe in, that if I do believe it and I hear somebody say that it must mean it's not biased. It's the same thing that, well, people say something is political, but 9 times out of 10, that means it's espousing some kind of whatever political analysis that either you don't believe in or doesn't match the status quo. So it's our responsibility as viewers of content to be able to identify bias. It is both on the presenter and the person learning. Not a lot of people like to have that responsibility put on them, though. But again, it goes back to the idea you should not be consuming content for the purposes of being validated. Because if that's the case, you're doing learning wrong. And I'm not going to say I'm not victim to that either. All right, but here we go.
This channel is biased. It's true. Legal Eagle is completely biased. But maybe not in the way that you think.
Oh, wait, is this going to be one of those, like, you know, when people will say, like, that's a biased take or something, and then usually the refutation is, well, it's true. I'm biased towards the truth. That always seems like does that always seem like some kind of like narcissistic take or just like an easy cop out?
Legal Eagle isn't about Republicans or Democrats, liberals or conservatives. With few exceptions, Legal Eagle espouses no policy preferences. As a channel, we are agnostic about high taxes or low taxes, huge welfare state or no social safety net, open borders or zero immigration. First and foremost, we're lawyers. We care about good lawyering versus bad lawyering. And we're often asked to advocate to the best of our abilities, specifically about issues that we might disagree with. And our status as lawyers doesn't necessarily mandate that we feel any particular way about any of those policies. Reasonable minds can.
But it's impossible not to. That's the issue. Because I would think, even as a lawyer, you are still going to interpret the law in the way that you've experienced it, what you have learned about it. And that might push you to certain conclusions. And then also, those conclusions can be fairly consistent. Like, these guys have been very consistent about some of the legal ramifications and legal uses or interpretations, and have condemned a lot of those that, of course, have consistently come from, like you saying, not really about party, but like condemning a lot of those coming from the, like Republican Party. But then also dropped in things they didn't like about, I know with like Biden pardoning, like the son, or like people like that, like pardoning in general. I actually covered that recent, but you can definitely see there's a consistency they have. So it'll be interesting to see what they say about that, because that's initially what people are going to say is you are biased because you have consistently condemned to a high degree consistently Republicans or President Trump. But like, what would be the reason for that? Is it just because they are like, we follow the law or something? Let's see.
And do feel any particular way about any of those policies. Reasonable minds can and do differ. When it comes to policy preferences, we lawyers can't tell you the answer. I mean, we can. Individually, we have very strong feelings about all of those things, but we don't think that this channel is the right place or the right avenue to espouse our opinions on those topics.
They do that a lot, though, right? I mean, they do kind of do that a lot. Again, going into law, you have these kind of like social sciences and stuff. There is often a motivation for that, right? Like you feel there might be one where you feel like there's a problem with the law system and you want to be somebody that inserts themselves with that. Maybe again, you feel like criminals aren't being prosecuted enough, or you're like people aren't being defended well enough, or it could be people are trying to wiggle through the legal process to have unfair advantages. There can be a lot of motivations, I think, to go into law outside of just being like, I just want to practice law, I guess.
But, and this is key, Legal Eagle doesn't pick sides based on party affiliation. We pick sides based on legal principles and reality. And yes, that means sometimes one side looks worse than the other, not because of partisan bias, but because we think some people are just wrong based on the law. But
okay, so he's doing the thing, I was saying, it would just be like, I'm, biased towards the truth or something. And again, they have been pretty consistent, I feel like, for that.
We admit it, we are biased. The way we think about it is this: we are nonpartisan, but we're not apolitical. The law.
That's a good distinguishing here, nonpartisan versus apolitical. I like that. Okay. So free from party affiliation, that's nonpartisan. Apolitical, not interested or involved in politics. So it'd be interesting though if they're saying like, okay, Legal Eagle, that's a I don't know, it's a staff of people, right? So like a staff of people don't have a party affiliation, but the individuals might. So is he, part of a political party or something? And his staff, I would probably say so. And then not interested or involved in politics. Law is intertwined with politics too, though, because they meet. You exert political prowess through the law.
Law is the end result of politics, and it's impossible to talk about the law without talking politics. So we think it's important, especially now, to lay it all on the line. What do we stand for?
All right.
Well, we stand for the rule of law.
Okay.
At the core of everything that we do here is the rule of law. That means
almost everybody would say that, whatever political perspective you would be on, is like, we stand for the law. Interpretation of law is always interesting because we have a whole branch. Our whole judicial system is about interpreting law.
That the law applies to everyone equally, whether you're the average Joe or the president of the United States. The law doesn't, or at least shouldn't, care if you're a Democrat or Republican or the last surviving Whig Party member. When someone breaks the law or tries to twist it into an unrecognizable mess, we'll call it out. If a politician or government official gets caught abusing power, evading legal consequences, or...
Yeah, this is the one I saw too, where it did break a little bit of their consistency if it was on party affiliation. I covered this video. I'll link it down below. But yeah, saying that him, Biden pardoning his son Hunter was an abuse of power. It actually inspired me to do and just to look into, and I just did a quick video after that, an original, where I'll talk about the history of pardoning power, just to kind of like put it in its context. Check that one out too. By the way, I've been putting out a lot more original stuff recently. I think you'll like them. They're a lot of fun.
Or outright ignoring the law, we're going to cover it. And if that offends your partisan sensibilities, well, that's a you problem. We stand for access to justice and judicial independence. We believe in access to justice, the idea that the law shouldn't
be seeking
only work for the rich and
validation.
powerful. If a system is stacked against everyday people, or if the courts are being manipulated for political purposes, that's a huge problem. We think judges should be neutral arbiters of the law, not political operatives handpicked to rubber stamp an agenda.
I feel like, and don't you feel like that everybody says that, like, okay, they want to be this, these arbiters of issues, right? It's like these judges are not supposed to have political affiliations, but they do, and they will be supported by politicians. But do you think what in the scale of importance ends up being weighted more? Okay, having whatever some like nonpartisan interpretation of laws, or people wanting the law to suit their motives better? Doesn't it seem like the more cynical side of it, where it's like, as long as it promotes your goals, then like good, ends justify the means kind of thing? It seems like that's often the case.
And if a judge starts acting like a political hack, we're going to talk about that too. We stand for legal education and ethics. This channel at its core is about legal education, helping people understand their rights, how the legal system works, and why bad legal arguments deserve to be obliterated.
Did he cover the lawyer that was over Trump's charges in New York City that were just before the election? I know a lot of people will talk about how they're saying like that judge was basically just like a tool, an extension of the Democratic Party. Did he cover that? And if he did I don't think I saw it, but like, did they make a conclusion about that?
That means debunking misinformation, breaking down landmark cases, and of course, absolutely roasting terrible legal takes. We also stand firmly for human rights and civil liberties. That includes issues like due process, free speech, and personal freedoms. We believe in freedom of speech in the First Amendment sense. The First Amendment only protects you from government suppression of speech, not from consequences, criticism, or getting dumped on.
Do you guys consider these biases?
But we also really believe the government has no business regulating or punishing speech or belief. And what we stand for also...
To an end, right? People love speech and love that as long as it pursues your ends. But again, a lot of times it may not, or you're going to label them as like hate speech, still a part of speech, but it's hate speech. Or again, the yelling fire in a crowded room. Where's the line of free speech for everyone?
Dictates what we stand against. We stand against political corruption and abuse of power. This should be obvious. But corruption is bad. When politicians use their positions for personal gain, break the law with impunity, or turn government institutions into their personal enforcers, that's a problem. Whether it's Bob Menendez or Donald Trump, we're going to call it out regardless. Now, we can have a philosophical debate about what qualifies as the law. Spoiler, it's not just the words that are codified into statutes or cases, but it includes norms and mores, and when those are validated, we'll call that out too.
Also, precedent. Precedent is such a big thing that once courts rule on something, it sets the precedent, or that, other cases that are similar to that should follow with the same type of conclusions.
Members of the legal system, we absolutely despise weaponizing that system, whether it's through frivolous lawsuits, politically motivated prosecutions, or bad faith legal arguments designed to obstruct justice. When people try to use the courts as a bludgeon rather than a shield, we think that's an abuse of the legal process, and we stand against it. We stand against lying, ignorance, stupidity, and cringe. Look, we love a good legal argument, but what we don't love is lying, ignorance, and stupidity. And there's a big difference between arguing in good faith and just...
So there it was, like the free speech argument that Alex Jones had, where he was talking about Sandy Hook, and what did he say? The parents were like paid actors of those children that were killed. And wasn't that kind of his like defense or something like that it's free speech or just... speculation, and the courts came down hard. If you saw that, putting over $1 billion in damages on there.
Spewing nonsense. We enjoy, and there's a big difference between arguing in good faith and just spewing nonsense. We enjoy a hearty debate, but if you're going to debate or argue, do it on the merits. We also think we need to bring back a little shame and a little self-respect. But unfortunately, standing up for the rule of law is not evenly distributed. We believe that all of these things are nonpartisan, and if they are partisan, then your party sucks. But to say that both sides do it is as true as it is irrelevant. These ideals are not...
Saying that both parties do it is as true as it is irrelevant.
At the moment, equally shared. So let's address the elephant in the room.
Let me put that whole thing back together here.
Sucks. But to say that both sides do it is as true as it is irrelevant. One
of the big problems with that whole thing is both sides do it is it's often used as an excuse to do it. And then you get into this like excuse ping pong, right? Where you're like, you're responding because they did it. Well, you're going to respond back and do this certain thing that, generally we would say is bad, and then go back and forth. But at some point, like somebody's going to have to be the last one to just accept that somebody else did something in some biased ways. And that's hard to do.
Ideals are not, at the moment, equally shared. So let's address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
People love to accuse this channel of being biased or anti-Republican because we've been highly critical of Donald Trump.
Right.
So let me be as clear as possible.
Well, one thing you'd have to dissociate then is, are people trying to say that Donald Trump is the Republican Party, right? Is that what has happened? That if you're a Republican, then you're all in, on Trump and the way that he does things? Or are you separating Republicans and Trump, or again, bulking them all together?
Don't dislike Donald Trump because he's a Republican. We hate President Donald Trump because he is actively dismantling the rule of law. And to the extent the MAGA movement, such as it is against the ideals that we've just described, we are against that movement as well. At the moment, there's a...
Okay, so they pretty much come out and, said that. Now, the response would be likely that that system is flawed, that and it depends, I guess, on what you're talking about with Trump. Is it the allegations that have come against him for certain crimes, or his use of the law, right? Which one is the one that's egregious, or that, I guess that you would disagree with? Because defense would be like, well, the people that were accusing of things were politicizing it, so it was unfair, for example.
Among commentators who now see the authoritarian and outright fascist tendencies of the current president. They meekly defend themselves by rhetorically
wondering, F word.
Who could have seen it coming? Well, we did. We saw it coming. We saw it in his first term, we saw it before he ran for president, and we definitely saw it in the 4 years after he was voted out of office. Unfortunately, we lawyers were Cassandras. If you know what the law is, it's not hard to see when people aren't following it. And unfortunately, right now, many people are gleefully casting the law aside because it's politically expedient. But that is the ultimate in short-term thinking. The signs were there in broad daylight. Need I remind you that Donald Trump is a felon? Just because he wasn't punished doesn't mean he isn't a criminal.
So that's where I was saying where the counter has been that these were sham trials or something like that. So it reduces that confidence. So now people are like, well, you got to fix the judicial system, but in the interpretation of others, fixing that judicial system is actually making it more dishonest. It becomes, it's just like, it's impossible to separate law and politics.
He's an adjudicated criminal and felon for financial crimes.
Why was Snoop Dogg on there?
Had the Supreme Court not interfered, he would almost certainly be a felon for state crimes, pressuring state officials to find votes, election crimes, trying to overturn a free and fair election through, among other things, the fake elector scheme, obstruction crimes, obstruction of justice, and lying.
You saw that with basically quitting, right, and pardoning all the January 6th participants there that had, gone through the judicial system to get to, whatever punishments they're serving. So is that like an abuse of it? It's written in the Constitution. Obviously, you can pardon people, but is that then like countering the pardoning power just in general is such an interesting debate to have. And I covered that a few times. And if you want to talk about that more in the comments, go for it. What do you think about pardoning power? Should there be limits? And what do you think of it and how it's used?
And national security crimes, stealing classified documents, hiding them, and lying about it. But on top of that, he was found civilly liable for defamation related to his sexual assault of E. Jean Carroll, defrauding the state of New York.
Which some people say has been politicized as well.
And that doesn't even get into his bankruptcies or other settlements. Donald Trump has been indicted 4 separate times on 91 felony charges. That's a record, and not the good kind. And on top of that, he was impeached twice. Once for withholding hundreds of millions of dollars of U.S. aid to Ukraine in an attempt to solicit a bribe in the form of fabricating dirt on his political rival, Joe Biden, and once for inciting the insurrection that led to the riot that infiltrated the U.S. Capitol and sought to prevent the certification of the Democratic election.
Before we get kind of to his end thesis there, do you think that is showing bias to condemn these things from that perspective, of the legal interpretation perspective? Well, really, legal execution.
Now, we can debate whether those things are crimes, but there is no doubt that they are or should be politically disqualifying. And now, in his second term, Trump has sought to avoid the constitutional order entirely to, among other things, illegally impound billions of dollars of congressional funds, illegally weaponize the justice system, illegally pull criminal prosecutions as political favors, illegally shut down federal agencies, illegally deport people with zero due process, illegally punish First Amendment protected speech and assembly, illegally punish lawyers and law firms he doesn't like, illegally remove security clearances as political punishment, illegally arrest judges he doesn't like, illegally dole out political benefits to his friends and family members, illegally solicit bribes through operating his businesses and crypto schemes. Second term, same as the first. But
I think the idea is just push the limits, I guess, of the presidency, or maybe even go into unprecedented things and go to them hoping that at least like some of them get through, because we've seen some of them been held up in court or shot down in court. But what do you think is sort of the motivation there for Trump when it comes to his use of the legal systems or his power as president?
But rest assured, if tomorrow a Democratic president came along and did half the things that Trump has done, we would roast them just as hard. This is not about party. It's about whether the law still means anything.
Viewers?
This isn't just bad politics. It's banana republic tin pot dictator nonsense. If any other president had done any single one of these things, they would be a legal footnote next to Richard Nixon. And when a Democrat or a libertarian or a communist or a Green Party member engages in manifest illegality or norm breaking, We cover that too, as we did with Eric Adams, Bob Menendez, and when Joe Biden pardoned his son. We don't criticize President Trump because we hate Republicans. We criticize Trump because he is actively trying to dismantle democracy, corrupt the legal system, and place himself above the law.
Do you think that's a biased interpretation of what Trump is doing? You're going to see probably different comments down below.
That is a problem no matter what your party is. And look, if you think that this is bias, then let me make a deal with you. The moment a Democrat tries to overturn an election, hoard classified documents, solicit bribes, or pressure the DOJ to arrest political enemies, we'll make an entire video roasting them too. Because this isn't
insert some attempt somewhere of Democrats doing that, right?
About partisanship, it's about the rule of law. As I've said before,
I'll have to see what the comment section is like of this original video.
The channel didn't focus so much on Trump. I hear you, and I agree with you. I wish I didn't have to think about him at all, let alone continually research and analyze completely unprecedented and authoritarian legal moves every single day. But unfortunately, when it comes to understanding the law, media literacy, whether we're talking about traditional media or Joe Bob's freewheeling independent podcast for free thinkers,
Joe Bob's?
is abysmal. And we will continue to tirelessly explain both the legal and illegal moves of this increasingly dictatorial president. And we will continue to work to broaden our scope to make sure we don't leave out other legal stories and get back to the fun law splainers and reactions. So is Legal Eagle biased?
Hasn't been as much of those,
Damn
huh?
right we are. We care deeply about the rule of law, and we're not going to hide it. Being objective doesn't mean both sidesing things. We can't do a story about a Democrat doing something illegal every time Trump does something illegal because there just aren't enough Democrats.
Some people do think, and you can ask yourself this, is it if you're unbiased, if your conclusions or criticisms are literally 50-50% of your content. Do you think that is an indicator, though, of unbiasedness?
The law breaking isn't evenly distributed, and we're not going to tell you a fairy tale that they are. And if that bothers you, maybe it's time to start demanding better from your politicians. Maybe you should be biased too. Thank you for listening to this op-ed. Admittedly, this video contained more opinion than most of our normal videos. If you'd like to support the mission of this channel to demystify the legal miasma that we live in, one way to do so is by signing up for our homegrown streaming platform and sponsor, Nebula. On Nebula, you can watch all of our videos ad-free and early because our videos always go up on Nebula first. This channel has been increasingly demonetized this year on YouTube. For example, our recent video about how the government cannot legally deport citizens was
There's been a lot of that recently
because it showed a single still image of the World Trade Center on 9/11.
I've had more than usual recently too.
But we lost a huge amount of revenue because of YouTube's mistake. And people often ask if it helps the channel more to watch on YouTube or Nebula, and the answer is emphatically Nebula. The watch time payouts are bigger, and since my creator friends and I created Nebula ourselves, we don't worry about demonetization standards. Which is why we put tons of content on Nebula, like our video on how RFK Jr. can and cannot legally ban vaccines, and our video on unhinged judges that went too far. That content wouldn't work on YouTube or it might get demonetized, so it's only available on Nebula. Plus, instead of sponsorships like this one, we always try to add a little bit more analysis or opinion to the end of Nebula videos. So if you'd like to sign up, you can get 40% off the yearly subscription, a year of the best content for just $36, or you can even gift that to a friend with a gift card. Or you can check out the lifetime subscription, where for $300 you can get access to Nebula forever. Either way, you can click the link below. And after that, you can click on this link over here for more Legal Eagle, or I'll see you.
All right, as we close up here, just a couple of the questions remaining in my mind that you guys can give feedback on is, what do you constitute as bias? What do you consider to be the like signs of bias, like where you can go, okay, that is a bias or something like that? What do you do when you see bias? Does that mean you then avoid it? If you are avoiding it, do you then find yourself going back to comfort zones of, and how you know something's a comfort zone is usually when you learn about something, if it does validate what you already kind of know to be true. And then, but again, we can also get in that sticky situation of just saying, no, I'm just going towards things that like are true. And that could become, again, the traps, I guess, that we get into, especially with media consumption, about validation. And it's easy to do that, again, because we live in a world of algorithms now with our social media, with YouTube and all that. The more of something you are looking at, the more you're going to see of it. And it does become more important. And we talk about this in education too, about the increasing need to be able to identify biases and look at lots of different ideas. Be okay with saying things like, I don't know, or I don't have an opinion yet. And again, that's very difficult because it totally goes against our intuition as humans. It really does seem to be that case. So anyway, what do you think about them saying what they consider to be their bias? Basically, they're saying we are biased towards, like, whether it's the truth or what else are they saying? Like, norms of the law. Do you believe that there's consistency in that? Do you think Legal Eagle does that consistently? What do you think are places that you would consider less biased, and why do you think those are less biased? I'd like to hear from you guys. Let me know down below. All right, we'll see you all next time. Bye.